What if I told you the Transformers universe is home to some absolute giants so massive they could crush skyscrapers, devour planets, and turn entire battlefields into their personal playgrounds? Stick around, because today we're counting down the 10 biggest Transformers of all time, from the smallest to the biggest. Whether you're here for the colossal chaos of Devastator, the fiery rage of Grimlock, or the universe-shaking power of Unicron, this list is packed with jaw-dropping facts about the titanic titans of Cybertron. Let's kick things off with number 10. At number 10 is Longhaul, who stands at about 65 feet. This guy's one of the Constructicons, a Decepticon group that loves to build, destroy, and then rebuild again. Pretty much the perfect minions for any evil scheme that involves heavy construction or heavy demolition. Longhaul's day job is basically being the team's transport, and he transforms into a giant chartreuse-colored dump truck, which is helpful if there's a ton of rubble to haul or a bunch of materials that Megatron wants moved around for a new plan. One of the coolest things about him is that he can combine his Constructicon buddies to form Devastator. As huge as he is on his own, Longhaul is just one part of that bigger beast, serving as Devastator's torso. Interestingly, in some versions of the story, Longhaul is one of those Decepticons who discovered humans on Earth in ancient times, calling them weak and easily breakable. He's not exactly the friendliest person to have at a party, but if the party involves carrying a 90-ton load across a desert, he's the guy to get the job done. He also packs dual heat-sinking missiles for dealing with anyone who gets in his way. Moving on to number 9, Dragonstorm, who stands about 70 feet tall. Dragonstorm is introduced in Transformers: The Last Knight, and the name is very appropriate because this bot isn't just one creature, it's actually formed by a group of Cybertronian knights, the Knights of Iacon. They merge together into this three-headed dragon that can rain fire from the sky and definitely cause a ton of chaos for any Decepticons in the vicinity. Dragonstorm has a medieval vibe thanks to that storyline where King Arthur and the wizard Merlin are part of the Transformers lore. Whenever the knights combine into Dragonstorm, they basically become a flying fortress of flame, and the Autobots sometimes use Dragonstorm as a transport in massive battles. One of the best moments is when Dragonstorm devastates those smaller Decepticon forces, clearing a path for Optimus to do his usual hero thing. The knights that make up Dragonstorm, like Dragonius and Stormrain, show that Transformers can get medieval if they want to. And let's be honest, a three-headed Robo-Dragon is a unique look even in a franchise full of crazy alt modes. Next up at number 8 is Slug, who is an imposing 71-foot-tall Dinobot that transforms into a mechanical Triceratops. Also known as Slag in certain continuities, he is basically a big, angry bruiser who really only listens to orders when they involve smashing Decepticons or something similarly violent. Slug makes his big appearance in Transformers: Age of Extinction alongside other Dinobots like Grimlock. He's decked out in spiky armor, has that medieval knight aesthetic, and in the movie, usually gets ridden into battle by an Autobot like Drift. After being freed by Optimus Prime, Slug helps decimate entire waves of Galvatron's forces. He's especially great at ramming through obstacles, and that Triceratops head is basically a living battering ram. If an Autobot or a human tries to give him a non-combat order, he's more likely to just snort and stamp the ground. But his temper works in the Autobots' favor more often than not. Decepticons don't stand a chance when they're in Slug's crosshairs. Sliding over to number 7, Demolisher. This 74-foot-tall Decepticon is basically a giant excavator on steroids, transforming into a Terex O&K RH400 hydraulic mining excavator. He's massive enough to squash cars like they're soda cans. In Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, Demolisher is first seen in Shanghai, where he's big, loud, and in no mood to hide. A big reason he's so fearsome is that with treads instead of legs, he can roll over highways and cause utter mayhem, flattening anything beneath him. There's a scene where Demolisher wreaks havoc on a freeway, tossing vehicles everywhere and generally causing a monstrous amount of collateral damage. It's so brutal that it definitely leaves an impression of just how unstoppable some Decepticons can be when they're not worried about stealth. Optimus Prime eventually steps in to stop him, jumping onto his giant wheelbase and firing point blank. Despite the classic lines from Optimus like telling Demolisher to pull over, the Decepticon is as defiant as any. It takes both Prime and Ironhide to knock Demolisher off balance and send him crashing down. Even then, with his dying breath, Demolisher warns the Autobots that Megatronus, also known as the Fallen, will rise again, showing just how committed to their cause these big guys can be. Now charging in at number 6 is Scavenger, standing 75 feet tall. In many versions, he's also a massive excavator, very similar to Demolisher. In Revenge of the Fallen, Scavenger helps form the torso of Devastator, along with other Constructicons like Mixmaster, Scrapper, and Overload. Outside of that combined form, Scavenger is still terrifying on his own. He's got those huge circular treads that let him move a bit like a wheel, letting him plow through city streets if he feels like it. You can't talk about Scavenger without mentioning the big moment in the Battle of Egypt when all the Constructicons unite to bring out the Star Harvester. Scavenger and his buddies cause a lot of trouble for the Autobots and the human allies as they rampage around, combining into Devastator. Unfortunately for Scavenger, that also leads to a railgun strike from the US military that ends up obliterating Devastator, taking out all his components, including Scavenger. Roaring into number 5 is Grimlock, the Dinobot leader, at a towering 84 feet. Any Transformers fan who loves dinosaurs probably has a soft spot for Grimlock. He's usually depicted as a big, stubborn T-Rex who is loyal to the Autobots, but really only follows orders from those he deems worthy, like Optimus Prime. In Age of Extinction, Grimlock is captured on lockdown ship, but eventually freed by Optimus, who basically challenges him to see who's stronger. Once Grimlock loses, he acknowledges Optimus as an alpha figure, letting the Autobots ride him and other Dinobots into an epic final battle. Grimlock's introduction into the live-action movies was a standout moment because he's so massive and unstoppable that even Decepticons look a little panicked. He smashes entire squads with his tail, breathes fire, and bites Decepticons clean in half if he's in a bad mood. In The Last Night, Grimlock is shown living in a scrapyard with the Autobots, casually munching on a police car like it's a squeaky toy. He's definitely not housebroken, and that huge mouth combined with a stubborn personality can be comedic gold in quieter moments, but when the time for jokes is over, Grimlock steps up and can fling Decepticons around like rag dolls. It's pretty safe to say that no one wants to be on the wrong side of that T-Rex jaw. Lumbering in at number 4 is Scorn, who stands at a whopping 87 feet tall. Scorn is another Dinobot who shows up in Age of Extinction, transforming into a Spinosaurus with multiple sails along its back. There's a reason he's known as the demolitions expert among the Dinobots, because when he transforms, things get wrecked in a hurry. He's covered in spikes and scales and has an enormous whip-like tail and exudes major intimidation from every angle. In the story, Optimus frees him and the other Dinobots as reinforcements, giving them the choice to fight alongside the Autobots against the Creators and Decepticons or face certain doom at Optimus's hands. When Grimlock yields to Prime, the rest follow. During the ensuing Hong Kong battle, Scorn tears through enemies with that monstrous sail and a left-hand gauntlet shaped like the Spinosaurus's head. Because of his size and the spiky protrusions on his back, he's basically a walking wall of blades. Even if a Decepticon manages to dodge his snapping jaws, they'll probably end up impaled on his spines. After the threat is neutralized, Optimus sets all the Dinobots free, so Scorn heads off, presumably to enjoy a nice, quiet life away from the chaos. Until someone inevitably tries to start trouble, that is. Scorn might be overshadowed by Grimlock in fan popularity, but in terms of sheer height and intimidation, he takes everything up a notch. Thundering in at number 3 is Devastator, a massive 108 feet of pure destructive force. This is the combiner formed by several Constructicons. Names like Mixmaster, Scavenger, Scraper, Hightower, Overload, Longhaul, Skipcheck, and sometimes a couple more depending on the continuity. In Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, Devastator is basically a rampaging beast with limited intelligence but incredible raw power. He's got this terrifying vortex grinder in his mouth that can suck up objects, cars, and unlucky Transformers like a massive vacuum of doom. There's a scene where Devastator is climbing the pyramid in Egypt, ripping away at the structure to reveal the Star Harvester hidden inside. The Autobots and their allies are practically powerless on the ground, trying to figure out how to stop a giant that can create a local gravity well. As unstoppable as he seems, though, Devastator does have a weakness: a well-placed shot from a big enough gun. In the movie, that ends up being an experimental railgun that the US Navy fires, blowing Devastator apart in a single shot. Careening in at number 2 is the Driller, clocking in at around 1,080 feet. Now, the Driller isn't exactly a Transformer in the traditional sense, it's more like Shockwave's monstrous pet that hails from the depths of Cybertron. Some call it an extraterrestrial creature or a living machine that adapted to the metal world, but one thing is certain, it's freakishly huge. The Driller shows up in Transformers Dark of the Moon, and every time it appears, it's basically run for your life territory. When it's first introduced, it shows that even Optimus Prime has trouble dealing with its massive tentacles, which can slice through buildings like they're made of cardboard. The Driller can be commanded by Shockwave, who uses it for tasks like retrieving important artifacts or just generally decimating entire areas. The Driller's favorite party trick is wrapping its tentacles around skyscrapers and turning them into dust in a matter of seconds. During the Battle of Chicago, it topples entire blocks while the Autobots and humans scramble to stay alive. The moment Jetwing Optimus arrives and blasts the Driller's body to bits is super satisfying, because that's the kind of unstoppable force it takes to put this mechanical horror down. There's also some extended lore in the games that suggests Shockwave and the Driller were cryogenically frozen together in a secret base. That's how big a threat it is. Someone decided the best move was to freeze it in place and hope it never, ever wakes up. When it does, it's basically unstoppable without a Prime-level beatdown. Finally, at number 1, the biggest and baddest of them all, Unicron, who measures around 12,000 kilometers. Yes, kilometers! This is the planet-sized Cybertronian god of chaos, a cosmic entity that sometimes lies dormant at Earth's core, or in another version, travels the universe devouring entire worlds. Unicron is so massive that he literally dwarfs anything else in this list by a cosmic margin. In various stories, he's the twin brother of Primus, the deity who became Cybertron, and the two represent chaos and order in an eternal struggle. Some versions of the lore say Earth was formed around Unicron's slumbering body, meaning that eventually the Chaos Bringer would awaken and potentially destroy the planet from within. In Transformers The Last Knight, there's a plot about Quintessa trying to siphon Unicron's energy to restore Cybertron, which causes Unicron's horns to pop up all over the Earth. That is definitely an uh-oh moment for the humans who suddenly discover these giant horns sticking out of the ground. However, the new movie continuity in Rise of the Beasts suggests Unicron is separate from Earth, functioning instead as this unstoppable force drifting through space, hungry for entire planets. In any continuity, the key takeaway is that Unicron's the final boss for Transformers lore. Dealing with him usually requires the Autobots, Decepticons, and basically anyone who doesn't want their planet eaten to team up, because the scale of this threat is cosmic. Unicron can sometimes manipulate lesser Cybertronians or reformat them into new forms. If there's a single entity that absolutely nobody wants to tick off, it's this one. Whether as the core of Earth or as a free-floating planet killer, Unicron is truly the biggest of the big. And there you have it, the 10 biggest Transformers that have ever graced the screen or lore. From the unstoppable might of Grimlock to the towering devastation of Devastator, all the way to the universe-shaking chaos of Unicron, these bots prove when it comes to size, Transformers do it best. So, what did you think? Did your favorite make the list? Who do you think is the most terrifying or the coolest of the bunch? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching and see ya. Bye!